Let's do this. Alright, that was my song, True Blue Is Your Color. It's kind of a folksy song, and there's not, I mean, that's all there is to it at the moment. It's, again, one of those works in progress. And it's kind of a patriotic song, but I wouldn't really call it that because it's kind of a depressing, pessimistic view of the fate of our country. Because we're supposed to be a nation built on freedom and equality, on individuality instead of collectivism. We're supposed to be, you know, a country that prides itself on individual freedom, on natural rights. That's, you know, the Declaration of Independence spelled everything out, and the Constitution was framed on the principles outlined in that document. We have natural rights. We have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and anything that infringes upon those is unjust. And yet, everything I hear in the news and the media lately is more and more instances where people are telling other people how to live their lives. Not because, you know, somebody else is ruining my life. It's like, no, it's the other way. It's the other way around, where they feel like they're entitled to whatever. They're entitled to your money. They're entitled to tell you how to talk, how to act, what your religion should be, where your religion is allowed. What religions are valid and which ones aren't. Which ideas to tolerate and which ones, you know, we don't tolerate. They constantly telling other people how to live their lives. And they have no authority to do that. There's no right to tell others what they should do to pursue happiness. That's a direct violation of that natural right. But the main thing I wanted to talk about, because this is why I decided on this option, is I just read something on Twitter about her emails. And yes, I know everybody's sick of her emails, but as a former Air Force member who had top secret security clearance, and who has not just had top secret security clearance and dealt with, you know, classified information, I was also a record management responsible for classified information. So I don't know if it's a side appointment that they volunteer you for. So you're voluntold to do this extra job that's not a part of your main job. I was a computer programmer, so I know something about computers. I've got my Security Plus clearance, which means I know about network security. So I had that training. I had record management training, which depicts all the things you need to do to maintain records for a government system. And I had top secret security clearance, where I was responsible for classified information and classified equipment. So the rules that I was instructed to follow were not Air Force specific, and everything under the government You need to use government equipment to do your job. You cannot use your personal cell phone. You cannot use your personal laptop. You cannot use your home computer to do government work. You have equipment that is assigned to you that you are responsible for. And when you use that equipment, they inform you that you are subject to monitoring. Everything you do on that piece of government equipment, they can monitor whenever they want. When you turn it back in, they can scan your computer and see if you were up to anything iffy, see if you were using it to, browse child porn or, to purchase illegal drugs on Silk Road or whatever. They can monitor the things that you do with their equipment because it's their equipment. While I'm thinking about this, why was the was it Department of Transportation phone that was given to those the Muslim couple that shot up those people? Why was that a standard phone and not a government specific phone where everything was monitored? Why did they even need to go to Apple to get it opened? That should be standard issue, because everything else that the government gives you is standard issue government specific versions. Like, we had Windows on our computers, but it wasn't your version of Windows. It was the government-specific version of Windows called Standard Desktop Configuration, which was it was Air Force-wide at the moment, or at the time when I was using it, but that's what went DoD-wide. So all government computers had that same version of Windows, where specific functions were locked down and restricted because they weren't allowed. So the same kind of thing should happen with all government-issued equipment. If the government's paying for it, it should be government-specific, so that way they can monitor it and you can't stop them. Problem solved. I don't understand the mentality of why you would issue someone a government anything and not have it subject to government, authority or, monitoring. That's stupid. So, not only is the equipment that you use, it has to be government specific, and they can monitor it, and they have access to they have the admin passwords and the root passwords too, and all that sort of thing that you can't control and you don't know and you aren't allowed to know. So not only is there all of that, but you're supposed to do things over their network. There are two networks for the DoD. There is SIPR and NIPR. Anyway, SIPR is the secure one, NIPR is the non-secure one. So SIPR is for confidential classified information, top secret, secret, and all of that. It's top and classified. The NIPR is for everything else. You can take NIPR information and you can put it on SIPR, and you can't take it back to NIPR. You cannot ever take anything from SIPR and put it on NIPR. There was a contractor in one of the offices that was using some of our classified equipment, and he took a thumb drive that was a secure classified thumb drive and accidentally plugged it into a non-secure computer, and immediately our network security they locked down the computer, they quarantined it to make sure that nothing could be sent from that computer. That computer was actually locked up in their secure area where they were, where they did various scans on it, and all. It was quarantined. They couldn't use that equipment anymore because it could have. Because even though it was just a USB drive being plugged in, it was a secure USB drive being plugged in that had classified information on it. And it triggered one of the network protocols, and they immediately locked it down to make sure that no information could be sent from that, so that way there was no way that the secure information could be further distributed on the non-secure network or onto other non-secure machines. Then they confiscated that machine from this user. They put it in their section where they ran tests on it to make sure that nothing actually escaped the computer, make sure that no actual secure information went onto that computer. And they had held that thing for like 2 years, and I think eventually they just nuked it. They put it in the microwave machine and wiped its hard drive completely. Because that's what happens when, how you decommission something that might have secure information on it. There's other systems that we had that were like network switches. All those will ever have on them is the IP address of systems. And yet because those systems were secure, they were part of the SIPRNet, those routers and switches, same thing. They couldn't be used anymore because they couldn't be turned into non-classified and be used for smaller projects or whatever. They had to be, I think those ended up being degaussed as well. It's called degaussed, although we call it nuke or whatever. They take a magnet and they go over the whole thing and make sure that all of its bits are scrambled and it's no longer usable. So I'm pretty sure that they did that with the switches as well that were no longer in use, that we turned into the equipment managers, because that's what happens. It's a security protocol to make sure that no security information gets out in any way, shape, or form. Why am I going into all these details? Because that's exactly the reason Hillary Clinton set up a dedicated private server. She was circumventing all of these rules in order to do what she wanted to do and not have people track what she was doing. So, because we have all of these rules and all of these overboard measures where the simple act of plugging a thumb drive from one network to the other was enough to trigger security and get them to confiscate that computer, what do you think would have happened when Hillary was sending emails that were classified at the time from her non-secure account? Had that been on the government network, she would have been nailed immediately. And then they either would have stopped her immediately, or they would have followed they would have tracked her and been like, hey, she's sending secure information over the non-secure over the non-secure network. And they would have followed the email traffic to see how many other people were in on this. So they might have turned it into an investigation right then and there. As soon as it was noticed that there was secure information on the non-secure network, that would have triggered something. They would have started monitoring. They either would have come to her immediately and stopped it, or they would have known and they would have been able to track the entire process, track every email that was sent out, everything that she did that was illegal and that was breaking the rules, use that as a case against her and everyone else she was sending stuff to, because they know too. It's another thing, even though I had, elevated training, everyone else is trained on the basics of keeping the two networks separate. Everyone else knows there are specific rooms that are dedicated to just the secure information. You need a special badge to get in. You have a special, you have not only a badge, but you have your own password for that badge to get into these rooms to begin with. You have to have not just your security clearance, but you also have to have the need to know. There was plenty of other secure rooms, like where the network security guys sat. You needed to ring the door and have them open it up, and they would turn on the little red lights in the ceiling and let you in. Because you are not, even though I had the appropriate clearance, I was not authorized to view that information. And so when those sirens come on, everyone in the room, they either log out of their secure machines, or they do something to make sure that no secure information is visible to someone just walking through. They take it very, very seriously, and I was on a base that had nothing. Yeah, sure, they were top secret and secret information, all that stuff. It was not a jeopardy to national security. None of that. All the stuff I came across was like, really, this is classified? Well, whatever. It's classified, so it stays that way. Whoever originated this thought it was significant enough to give it a classification. That's how seriously we took it at a base that had nothing. We didn't have nuclear weapons. We didn't have anything. And yet Hillary Clinton was working as Secretary of State. And I guarantee you, she spent time in the Pentagon and the White House. That's the kind of places you would expect it them to take this kind of thing way more serious, because they actually do have information that might jeopardize national security. They have operations that are in effect that they don't want anyone else to know about. Because there are people on the ground when those operations are in effect, and if the enemy finds out about the operation as it's going on, hey, guess what? You just killed everybody. That's the kind of information that she had access to. I don't know if any of that was the stuff that got leaked, or if that was, part of the emails and all that sort of thing. I don't know. But I do know that everything that is involved in this, no, we wouldn't have, anybody who did, I was going to say a quarter, anybody who did 1/10 of what she did would be in jail right now on any other installation. If anyone else other than her as Secretary of State had attempted to do what she did, they would be in jail for a very long time. No questions asked. Everybody on the base knew the procedures for secure information. I had extra training in that I know about the actual network security and how we do those things. The other thing I have, like I said, is I've got the records management training, which that means I was responsible for the storage of not only classified information, but the unclassified. And everything is a record. Everything. All of your emails, if they are work-related. I'm not talking about you sending your buddy, hey, where are we going to go eat for lunch? No, that's not a record. Nobody cares about that. You don't need to track that. But if you're like, okay, we're working on our next release and it's supposed to be out on this date, and where are we, how much progress are we making? Guess what? Because you're talking about work, you're talking about an existing project, that is a record. It becomes a record. They don't care if it's an email or if you write it down on a piece of paper. If it's something related to something you're working on for the government, if government money is going towards that, if it's your job, it's a record that is subject to Freedom of Information Act. That means because every U.S. citizen has the right to know what their money's being spent on. Why did we spend $100 grand on this? Oh, here's our justification for it. It's kind of a CYOA. I'm trying to limit the cussing here, so I'm trying to use the anyway. So it's kind of protecting yourself, because you're saying everything I did on this machine was justified. All of this stuff is work related. To kind of protect yourself from being, accused of fraud, waste, and abuse or anything like that. The other thing is you're responsible to the American people for what you're doing with their tax dollars. Everything we did that was work-related was a record of some sort, and it was annoying to track and monitor and label, and some stuff had to be stored in paper copies inside special cabinets, with a big label on the front that says, hey, this is part of whatever. So it's really, really annoying. There was a bunch of stuff to keep track of. It felt like a big waste of time, because I knew we weren't doing anything like, all that important. Most of the stuff that we did that was important was on a big database in the server room. So that I understand, keeping track of that and monitoring and keeping backups and all that sort of thing, and keeping that for so many years, because that was important stuff, because that was stuff that was not only just being worked, but it was also really, really, really helpful. I worked on the help desk for the Air Force, so there was a number that anywhere, anytime, any day, anywhere in the world where if you're a member of the Air Force and you're having a problem with any system, you call that number, and that's, most of the time it was password resets or something, hey, there was a bug in this application and we're just passing it on to whoever actually runs the application or the website or whatever. Yeah, it was a pretty big help desk, and it was 24/7, 365. So keeping track of all of those instances where people had an issue with the system, yeah, that's kind of important. So there's a whole bunch of reasons to maintain that information, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that like this hasn't been used for years, but because there's specific requirements for every record that exists. Now some of the times it's like, okay, keep it for 6 months after it's no longer in use. You know, you're only required to keep it for 6 months. And then sometimes it was like, keep it for 2 years. And there was other stuff that was like, keep it for 6 years. And then there was other stuff that was like, keep it indefinitely. And the other thing about the keeping it, there was 2 sets. There was active records and inactive records. So the 6 months only applies to the time that's an active record. So it's no longer in use, and then it's been 6 months as an active record. And then, hey, it's been 6 months, we can move it to inactive. And then it sits in inactive for a while. Sometimes this was a year, again, sometimes this was 6 months, sometimes it was, you know, infinite or whatever. It depended on the type of record. But there was specific time requirements for everything, which is another huge reason you're not supposed to delete records. You can delete copies of records, but the main record needs to be retained, and there is a time limit for when it needs to be retained. And so when Hillary Clinton deleted her emails, she was circumventing this entire system. And this is not an Air Force specific system. Records management is a government system. Now, the specific rules that I had to follow may have been Air Force specific, but there's something like this for every government body. And they're pretty much consistent across. So I know there was a period of time that those emails were supposed to be kept after they were no longer in use. And I know that there was a specific period of time that they were supposed to go to inactive. And then there was a specific period of time before they were supposed to be either disposed or moved to archive. I mean, there was a specific amount of time. And so while she was Secretary of State, she more than likely did not exceed any of those time limits in order to delete these records. The other thing is, as soon as the FBI inquired about them, they became important again. So they shouldn't have even, if they were still in archive, as soon as the FBI requested them, well, guess what? They go back to active. They go back to an active status because there is a need for them. So, that's, you know, they are no longer eligible if everything else says that they can be deleted or they should have been shredded. If they're still there and the FBI requested them, guess what? It's too late. Yet, these emails were deleted after the fact. Not before. Nope. During the request and after the request, which is extremely illegal, and everyone who was involved in that process should be in prison right now. Because they did that. Now, here's the other thing. When it comes to classified and to records, ignorance is not an excuse. That's something they drill into you. Ignorance is not an excuse. You don't need to know that you're breaking these rules in order to break these rules. If somebody enters a secure area and you're just like, oh, hey, I'm just going to walk in right after them, guess what? You broke the rules, you're going to get some kind of punishment. It may be a slap on the wrist, it may be a warning, whatever. Somebody's going to do something about it, though. They're not just going to let you walk in. Oh, you didn't realize this is a secure room. Oh, go. Yeah, just go on and go ahead. Go walk around and then, you know, bye, see ya, have a nice day. No, that doesn't happen. They take that stuff seriously. Even if they're not working on anything that's vital to national security, everything they take seriously. And that's how you need to treat all of these systems, because the second you get lazy and start to take a step back, that's when some incident happens where you just risk people's lives. They're erring on the side of caution. That's always the case. You assume somebody has bad intentions, and maybe later on they find out, oh, yeah, it was just it's a harmless mistake. Oh, well. Alright, this video's already gone on way longer than I thought. I just wanted to talk about Hillary Clinton's emails and the idiocy around it. Here's the other thing. When you delete something from a computer, it's not deleted. When you delete the porn that is on your background, guess what? It's not on your background anymore. It's still on your computer. Things don't go away. Your computer has a large amount of cache memory that is not considered part of your hard drive or your disk drive or any, whatever you're using as your main storage. So there's cache memory, which sometimes can retain that information for days, depending on how actively you're using that computer. Then there's all the other places where you actually store information. And so when you delete something, your computer does not delete that thing. You're like, oh, well, it puts it in the recycle bin. Yeah, it puts it in the recycle bin. Even when you delete it from the recycle bin, it's not off of your computer. It's still there. Basically, what it does is like, okay, I will just forget that file exists. It's still there, I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist. That's what your computer does. You just, it's kind of the out of sight, out of mind. So that's basically what your computer does. When you delete a file, it doesn't delete that file, it deletes the address to it. It no longer looks for it at that specific location, it no longer references it and all that sort of thing. It forgets the location. But it's still on your computer. That's why there are systems that can go through and they can find deleted files on your computer. And you're like, oh, but I deleted that years ago. No, it's still there. See, because your computer has gigabytes of storage. And generally, once that file is deleted, it only ever really disappears if it gets overwritten, if it gets saved over. Meaning that something else came along and your computer was like, this is more important, I don't have room to put this anywhere else, I don't have any free space, I'm gonna, this area that was dedicated to this file that I forgot about, well, I'm gonna use that space to store this new thing. And that's why it can be years and that file can still be there because it never gets overwritten. Nothing else comes along to take its place. There is specific software that is used to delete those files that the computer has chosen to, or that you've told the computer to ignore. It takes a special kind of software to go through and delete that information. Which is what Hillary did. On her personal server, they ran a program that went through, found all of these files that existed but were, marked as ignore, or what, I don't know the exact term for it. I just know that they still are there. These are files your computer can't find because it doesn't know that they are there. They're still there in the memory. There's still ones and zeros that outline that exact same message or that exact same document or file or whatever. All the ones and zeros, they stay in the same order. Your computer just stops looking at that section and treats it as if nothing's there, although there is still information there. So it takes a special kind of software to go through and be like, hey, all that stuff that is out there that has ones and zeros all set, but the computer the computer sees as empty, unused space. It goes through and it clears all that out. It takes a special kind of software to do that. So everything she did was specifically to circumvent that accountability. And had it been just emails of her yoga or her Chelsea's wedding, she wouldn't have used special software to get rid of it. She wouldn't have cleared it with that special software. That's the only reason you do that sort of thing is if you have something on your computer you don't want anyone else to know about. So that's why the only surefire way to make sure that information is gone is to take a high-powered electromagnet over that surface to make sure that it basically makes that hard drive completely useless. That's the only way to make sure that that information is lost forever. Now, Hillary Clinton didn't go that far because that would be pretty obvious if the computers that she was using were just destroyed after deleting inconsequential emails. Although the fact that they use specific software to delete these files completely from the computer hints that she is definitely hiding something that she shouldn't have done. Alright, this video is way too long as it is. Those are my takes on it. I don't know how she is not in a government jail. A federal prison of some type, maybe even a military jail. I'm not sure exactly how that works for Secretary of State, although I'm pretty sure she swore an oath and signed some form of some sort. So she should be subject to those same rules that I was. Because those are government-wide systems. They're not specific to the Air Force. How she is supposedly an eligible candidate for president. She shouldn't have security clearance, which you need top secret security clearance if you're going to be president. There's a background check that is involved with being president. She won't pass that background check. She can't. She deliberately circumvented our systems designed to prevent this exact course of actions where someone is using their position to do things illegally. Selling off national security, whatever. Doing favors for foreign governments, we don't know. All we know is that she was doing this specifically to get around the safeguards that we have in place to make sure that everybody is subject to the system of checks and balances. Everybody in the government is responsible to everyone else because they're ultimately responsible to the people as a whole. The idea was I was going to do Cobra Commander. I couldn't find a decent catchphrase for the guy. He doesn't really have one. But he does talk like this a lot, and he likes to yell like, "Come back here, you fools!" So that's what I'm gonna go with.